In this video, the first of our basics series, we're going to look at what web hosting actually is, how does it work, and why you need it. So we've got a very simple example here for you, and hopefully it'll all make some sense at the end. We're not going to go into too much depth, but just a general sort of concept. So let's assume that we've been busily building ourselves a website, and we've got our website built and coded on our local machine, and in fact we have such a thing right here. It's not the world's best website, but it will do to illustrate the purpose. Now, we've got a couple of things that we need to know about this website before we start. Initially, we look at the address in the address bar. In our instance, 192.168.0.10. Yours may be a different number. It may be 10 dot something, or it may say localhost or something of that nature. Either way, that indicates that the website is on your machine. And that's fine if you're looking to use the website from your machine. You can surf to it happily. Unfortunately, these IP addresses, those start in 192 or those start in 10 or anything with localhost, is only available on your internal network. It means if you've got a friend down the road who you want to say, have a look at my site, you can't give them a domain name like mytestsite.com to look at, because it won't resolve to the IP address that you've got there, regardless of how much changing you do on various settings. And you can't give them the IP address 192 because that's local to them in their instance, not local to you, and localhost is likewise local to them, not local to you, so you wouldn't be able to share it. So it's not a great deal of fun. What you can do is you can go through all sorts of hoops of getting yourself a fixed IP address, opening up your router, and then letting everybody come to your machine to look at your website. But let's assume your website becomes very popular. Obviously this one won't, but if your one is much better designed than this and does become popular, what happens if you get 10,000 people looking at your website every day? Your machine is not going to be able to cope with that, and likewise your ISP may well have a friendly word with you and say, do you know what, that's outside of our terms and conditions. What you therefore need to do is you need to put your website on a server that is firstly publicly available, so you and your friend down the road can look at your website, and is actually set up to be able to deal with 10,000, 100,000, a million visitors per time. And that infrastructure is not cheap. It's very, very expensive to set up servers like that, and network infrastructure and redundancy and all these sorts of bits and pieces. So the reason you have web hosting is to take all of that upfront expense and all of the management of those servers away from you. Now, managing servers is not a trivial thing to do. You can look after your PC at home, absolutely no problem, but a server is a completely different beast. It is set up entirely differently and is specific for the task. So you need someone who knows what they're doing, who can look after it for you. That's why you set up web hosting. And it's actually quite simple. Once you've chosen your host, they will all have a control panel of some kind. We have one. There we are. It looks like that. It's called Website Panel. This is what ours looks like for a test site that we use, Expeed hosting, and we can set up various bits and pieces with our website for this. So we just upload to our central server, and we've got this interface here to control everything with. There are separate videos telling you how to use this interface. This video is purely to determine what hosting actually is and how it works. There are a few gotchas in the world that you should need to know about. The first thing is terminology. If you've just got a website of your own, you're going to be looking for something called shared hosting. Okay, basically you share a server for hosting with any number of other people. In effect, once you've got shared hosting or any kind of hosting, you'll be given a number of limits. If we look at the page here, we can see that we've got a maximum amount of disk space, in this instance 20,000 megabytes or 20 gigabytes, and we've got a maximum amount of bandwidth, which is 150,000 megabytes or 150 gigabytes. These are bandwidth is per month, disk space is permanent, And we've got a number of domains that we can set up and various other bits and pieces, all of which we'll go into in more detail in other videos. But suffice to say, as long as you remain inside the constraints of whatever plan it is you have, you'll have no problem. If your website starts to become quite big or quite popular, or both, and you start getting to the top of your plan, you're going to need to look at upgrading, which in a hosted environment is very simple. You speak to your web hosting company and say, I need more, and you don't actually need, you don't need to go out and buy new hardware to cope with the situation. You just use more of their hardware. They charge you for it, but it's much cheaper than going out buying bigger servers. And that's it. If you don't upgrade your plan, you'll get hit with overage charges generally, but keep an eye on it and all will be well. So in essence, the idea of using a web hosting company rather than doing it yourself is you save money, you don't need to buy servers, you don't need to manage the infrastructure, you mainly just look after your site and how your site runs, and it's available to the world.